Every computer music setup needs to get audio signals in and out of the computer itself. To achieve this, you really need to invest in an audio interface. The built-in audio on your computer is okay for watching YouTube videos or using it for Skype, but the quality is not up to scratch for audio recording or music production. Your microphone inputs will be way too noisy and just not suitable for audio recording. Not to mention that the audio outputs will be really poor too. One job of an audio interface is to take the digital signal generated by your computer into an analog signal that can be connected to other audio equipment like speakers, mixers, effects units and headphones. Achieving the perfect conversion so that the analog signal is exactly the same as the original audio is the ultimate goal. So the difference between the built-in audio on your computer and the very best AD/DA converters from top-end audio interfaces is huge. A low-cost interface like a Focusrite 202 or a Steinberg UR22 is still way better than the built-in audio on your computer. But to get the best audio quality as you can, you need to up the ante again. You may have to invest in really expensive converters. For example, the RME UFX or the Prism Sound Orpheus. Generally, the more expensive the interface, the better quality of audio you'll achieve. The next thing to consider when buying an audio interface is the connectivity, or I/O input and outputs. This determines what you can plug into any particular interface, how many simultaneous inputs you can have, and the number of outputs that you have available to plug into any other devices. A simple interface will most likely have 2 inputs and 2 outputs. This is perfectly fine if you're only recording 1 or 2 things at once. However, if you want to record a whole live band, you'll need a lot more inputs to record your instruments and microphones into your software. Different audio interfaces have different I/O available, and these connections can either be digital or analog. Analog inputs can include line, microphone, and instrument inputs. These 3 types of inputs cover all types of analog signal you may wish to record. Line inputs for keyboards or electronic drum kits, microphone inputs for microphones, and instrument inputs for plugging guitars and bass guitars straight in without using an amplifier. Often a special connector is used that can accept any type of signal, line, mic and instrument, known as a combi input, which can be confusing but simply allows connections from either a jack or XLR connectors into the same socket. Digital inputs can only be used to connect other digital equipment and come in a variety of flavors including ADAT and SPDIF. The connections that you will need will depend on what you envision yourself doing and what other equipment you have. If you record a drum kit, for instance, you'll need a bunch of analog microphone inputs, and if you're recording an orchestra, you'll need even more analog for that. But if you're only ever going to record 1 instrument at a time, then having only 2 analog inputs would be fine. So when it comes down to it, it's horses for courses. Choose an interface that has enough I/O for what you see yourself doing. Make sure the interface you buy has enough microphone inputs that is important to you, or whether it has enough instrument inputs. One thing to note here is that the digital inputs, especially ADAT, can be used to expand the numbers of analog inputs. Simply by adding another separate AD converter to your system, for example the Focusrite Octopre or the Audient ASP 800, and taking the ADAT output from that converter and plugging it into the ADAT input on your interface, then voila, you've got another 8 inputs. When choosing an interface, you have a choice of how the interface will connect to your computer. Often, the choice you have is limited to what connections you have available on your computer. For example, many PC laptops will only have a USB. New Macs will have Thunderbolt or USB-C, and older Macs will have FireWire. One issue you may encounter on an audio interface is latency. If you're recording a vocal and the singer is listening to their voice through the headphone feed from the audio interface, then they will hear themselves a fraction late through the headphones. This is a nightmare for the performer and needs to be reduced to an acceptable amount so they can perform successfully. Luckily, most modern interfaces and computers have solved this issue, but it still needs to be managed properly. Most audio interfaces have a setting, and this is called buffer size. If the buffer size is lowered, then this reduces the latency. But the CPU may overload sooner and fewer tracks can be played simultaneously. Raising the buffer size can increase the latency, but it also helps out your computer processing power when you're playing multiple instruments in a track. Audio interfaces with a DSP mixer also often have DSP effects that can be added to the signals going through the mixer. In some cases, these effects are only for monitoring and won't be recorded to the computer, but are good for the performer to perform with a bit of reverb. While others do allow these effects to be recorded to the computer, the Universal Audio Apollo is a perfect example of this. where the DSP effects can actually be applied to any previously recorded tracks. Audio interface manufacturers often try to win your business over by including free software, and in some cases the software included is perfectly adequate for basic home recording and often opens the way to upgrade to full versions of the included software. Software bundled with interfaces include Ableton Live, Lite version, Cubase LE or AI cut-down versions, and others. This may have a bearing on your buying decision, and so it's worth knowing what software each interface comes with. Our audio interface packages show what software is included with each interface, and on the right side is a list of all the products we have available to you at the moment. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope this little video has helped you out in buying an audio interface. Take care.